Early one today, as you can see, unpleasant but necessary. Because what we're driving today is so interesting, so unusual, that I think we're going to need all day just to get our heads around it. I mean, even doing the walk around would take most of the day. I mean, literally, it would take most of a day to walk around it. This is called the Li Mega, and it is, frankly, one of the most remarkable vehicles I've ever come across. In fact, calling it a vehicle feels almost reductive. Getting you from A to B, it's just one of the things it can do. It's a minivan, but it's also a home entertainment system, a travel agent, a bedroom, a spa. But more than anything else, it's a glimpse into our not too distant future. Welcome to the Li Mega, and welcome to the Fully Charged Show.
Love the Fully Charged Show? Then join us live in Sydney this March, London this April, or in Vancouver, Farnborough and Melbourne in September, October and November.
Now, the first thing we need to say about the Li Mega at the top of this video, to be very clear, is that it's not for sale. Not where you live, anyway. This is a China-only model from a China-only brand at this moment in time. This is the only Li Mega anywhere in Europe right now, and as far as I can tell, they've only brought it over here essentially just to rub our faces in how much more advanced their EVs are than ours. So we're not going to waste any time doing an in-depth consumer review of this car today, because there's no point in me telling you whether you should buy one. You can't. Instead, I think we should do two things. Number one, just revel in some of the eccentricities of this car, of which there are many. And number two, most importantly, try to figure out what this car tells us about what we're going to be driving in 5 years' time. Because in terms of software and EV hardware, I do believe that this Li Mega is a generation in front of the cars we have here in Europe. Now, to illustrate that point, right at the top of the video, to prove to you that I'm not exaggerating, I want to start by telling you about the charging, okay? Now, this is a 160 kilowatt charger that we're plugged into right now. That's pretty quick here in the UK. Tesla superchargers go up to 250, some other networks go up to 350 kilowatts, but in reality, you rarely see more than 200 kilowatt charging here in the UK right now. This Li Mega in China, connected to the right charger, this can do 520 kilowatts charging. That means it can add 310 miles of range in 12 minutes. And that's not the impressive bit. This is. You know how cars slow their charging when they get to above 80% or drop below 20% to preserve the battery? Well, this does too. It'll drop all the way down to 300 kilowatts. Now, a little context on what we're doing today, because we had a nice idea for this car. We figured, since it sort of looks like a private, personal, high-speed train, and given that luxury train travel is sort of having a resurgence at the moment, we'd do some of our own. So that's what we're doing. We're taking a private train ride through the southwest. We started at Cheddar Gorge, we passed through Highbridge and Spaxton. We're now in the Quantock Hills on our way to the seaside. Lovely. Now, I felt it was only right to do a section from the second row, because there's so much stuff in this car to enjoy on the move that you can only really understand and enjoy fully if you're not driving. In fact, this is a flaw with our whole premise of scenic travel, is there's not much incentive to look out the window because I've got so many toys in here. Let me tell you about the software. The software is rapid, hyper-responsive touchscreens, and it's all AI powered, so it gets cleverer over time. The bottom line, the thing you need to take away from this, is voice command that actually works. We've had voice command on cars for such a long time now, and for the most part, they've not really been listening. But this is the dawn of a new era where you can just talk to your car, not using very specific words, but just like you'd talk to a person, and it will do as it's told. This car is very clever. You can give it multiple instructions at once. If you're on your way to London, you can ask it to plan your itinerary over the next 2 days, suggest some landmarks to go and see. You can point to a window or sunroof and say, open this, and it has cameras so it knows what you're pointing to. Or you can just do lots of all of those things at once in one single instruction. Watch. Li Xiaotong Xie, open this. Yes, sorry, I should have mentioned, she doesn't speak a word of English. But the very lovely people at Li, who did speak Chinese, when they delivered me the car, demonstrated these features and it was eye-opening. I've never seen such a fast and responsive voice command, and they weren't being really careful using the exact right words. They were sort of just muttering and pointing at stuff, and it was doing things instantaneously. It really is quite exciting to think we'll have voice command that actually works in the near future, because it's probably the safest way to communicate with your car while driving, and it's always been a bit rubbish up until now. This is pretty cool as well. Big 3K screen here for the second row and back seats, which I can control with gestures just like this. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. I can, for example, go down here and enter royal seat mode, which is going to make things even more comfortable for me by reclining me even further back. Sliding that one forwards, little footrest. Oh, deploys. This is very agreeable. There's even a nap mode where you can set a timer. When do you want to be woken up? It can play soothing music. It shuts the sunroofs for you. Beautiful. You really could conk out back here. There's even an AI generative painting app on this screen up here, which unfortunately I can't show you because I don't speak Chinese, but has been demonstrated to me. You describe something with your voice and it paints it for you. That's something. You just try getting your kids to look out the window when they've got stuff like that to play with. Look, sheep. I don't care, Mum. I'm painting hellscapes with my voice. This seems like a good moment to tell you the price of all of this. This remarkable, spacious, enormous, luxurious vehicle in China costs the equivalent of £57,000. That is, well, sort of the front half of Mercedes EQS, isn't it? Now, should we talk about the exterior? We best had, because, well, look at it. It's flipping massive, for one. 535 centimetres, if you're wondering. That's almost 5.5 metres. For context, VW ID Buzz long wheelbase stops about here. This is a Mercedes EQS. This is the Lee Mega. It's huge. It seats 7 in supreme comfort. I actually don't think its size is the most interesting thing about it, but it is an interesting take on how to go about doing a very large vehicle, because look at it. Lee says this design is inspired by the Bauhaus movement, by Dieter Rams' industrial design, and by Chinese minimalism. It's fantastic looking, and most importantly, what it is functional, because this shape is, of course, incredibly aerodynamic. I mean, everything about it is designed with slipperiness in mind, from the one single line to the air blade that cleanly cuts off the airflow at the back of it. The bottom line is a 0.215 drag coefficient. Now remember, the Tesla Model 3, the newly facelifted one, is 0.219, and that is the gold standard. This smacks it. The result is that this huge, enormously heavy electric car can comfortably do north of 3 miles to the kilowatt hour, even here in the dead of winter. That means over 300 miles of range without even thinking about it. If you look after it, 400. Right, regrettably, I've been informed that I'm obliged to actually drive the car at some point during this video like a peasant. But you know what? I'm happy to be in the front because there are some interesting things that jump out when you drive the Lee Mega. The big one is the comfort. It's not just the squashy seats, it's the suspension. Previously, when I've driven expensive luxury Chinese cars, I found that the suspension is the thing that betrays them. Which is to say, if you were to drive a luxury Chinese car and then get into a luxury German car, you would be able to tell that one of those companies has been doing suspension for 100 years and one of them's been doing it for 5. But I'm not sure that's the case anymore, because the dual chamber air suspension on this thing is unbelievable. It just steamrolls imperfections in the road. It is so comfortable. It might not be as dynamically capable as something like a BMW i7, which is both amazingly comfortable and actually quite good in terms of body control. This is very comfortable at the cost of rolling around fair bit if you drive it faster. But my goodness, they're getting better so fast. It's just another example of the speed at which the Chinese car industry learns and improves. Speaking of speed, it's got some. This large people carrier with an emphasis on luxury and comfort has 400 kilowatts and a 0 to 60 time of 5.5 seconds, which is pointless and strange. But I suppose it's got a lot of mass and it needs a lot of grunt to move that mass, and you want to be able to overtake. So there you go. Mentioned that, that's done now. Much more interesting is the battery. It's a big one, over 100 kilowatt hours usable. It's built in conjunction with CATL, and it is just absolutely state of the art. I mentioned the charging speed at the start of the video. I'll just clarify that it does slow down a bit as you get up near the top. It can do the full 520 kilowatts, basically from empty, but when it gets near to full, it'll drop down to a piddly 170 kilowatts, but no lower. And that speaks to outstanding thermal management. We talk about heat pumps a lot, right? Heat pump, make sure the battery is operating at the optimal temperature. Make sure that you're not eating into the battery too much when you heat your car. Well, a heat pump in this car is one of 13 things that are all there to ensure that the battery's temperature is optimal in the name of rapid charging, and in the name of ensuring that that rapid charging doesn't deteriorate the battery, doesn't harm its longevity. Let's chop our way through the interior of the Lee Mega. There's 8 square meters of it to get through. Let's just begin at the beginning and work our way backwards, and let's start with these chairs, because they are, oh, they're delightful. They're ever so squashy. This is what they call the magic carpet chair. That's the driver's seat. And this is the co-pilot queen's chair. That's actually what it's called in the press material. They're not passenger princesses anymore. They are co-pilot queens. And it's not a gender term. Gentlemen, you too can be a co-pilot queen if you sit here. This is maybe my favorite thing about the dash of this car. No gauge cluster, but instead of then having a speedo in a little tiny corner of the giant infotainment screen like you get in a Tesla Model 3, I've got it in a little screen in my steering wheel. And I also have it on a heads-up display. And that heads-up display is super detailed. I can have, when driving, the LiDAR's vision projected onto my heads-up display, so it's showing me what the car can see. I've turned that off because I don't really need it. But when I indicate, my blind spot camera, that appears in the heads-up display as well. And it actually means I have a really clean and simple interface as a driver. Yes, there are 2 gargantuan touchscreens in the middle of the cabin, and yes, the home screen for the passengers one is on Chinese Netflix and really invites them just to crack into a binge watch during the drive, but that's them, that's their universe. I've just got a small and simple and very responsive, by the way, steering wheel touchscreen and then a heads-up display, and I really like it. It's actually quite distraction-free, surprisingly. What else? Well, we've got lots of storage, huge amounts of storage. Slightly cheapy button there, but that's okay. More storage, wireless phone chargers. These screens are ridiculously responsive. I mean, it is freaky just how crisp these things are. If I pull up the old model of the car, this is, I don't know why it does a perfect 3D model of the car that shows whether the doors are open or not. And look, if I open my window, it does that as well. But this is all mainly to say that it is unbelievably quick and responsive. And when you use a car that's just got a really good responsive touchscreen, because it's got good software, it's all the more painful when you get back into something that's all slow and sluggish. So I'm really looking forward to this just being the norm. I mean, this is what it's all about, isn't it? This second row is a joke. This is proper private jet stuff. I've got thick shag carpets. I felt bad getting in here with my shoes on. Just so much room in this second row. I've got the seat all the way back in full antisocial mode, and it is magnificent. You've seen nap mode, you know it goes even further back than this too. We've got a little fridge, which also doubles as a warm box to keep your lunch warm. We've got lovely fold-out tables that have real stability to them. That's a lovely, nicely made thing. ID Buzz, take notes. Slightly counteracted by this incredibly cheap and nasty cup holder, but a cup holder nonetheless. Both seats have wireless chargers in the armrest. That's really cool. Massage seats. Front 4 seats all have massage, heating, and cooling. All 7 have heating. When have you ever seen a car with 7 heated seats? And incidentally, when have you ever seen this? Is that the biggest window that opens that you've ever seen? Good Lord, that's a lot of glass. Don't crack that, that'd be a real shame. But perhaps the most impressive thing is the back row. Because, you know, a Kia EV9 is a 7-seater, but the rear seats are only for small children that you dislike. This, however, I'm just gonna bring this forward, lean it up a bit. Still very comfortable, still huge room, but now, if I scooch into the back, properly roomy. Properly roomy. Good leg room, I can get my feet underneath. I mean, this seat is still super reclined, and I've got all the room in the world. By the way, I can recline too. But perhaps the most impressive thing about these back seats is the fact that they fold completely up. So they fold down and then they flip up. They call them magic seats, and Lee reckons you can get 4 full-sized mountain bikes into the back of this thing. Anyway, I'm just going to pop on my 3rd row heated seat. Excuse me. Well, I'll tell you what, we're passing through the Quantock Hills now on our way to the seaside, and there's some seriously narrow country roads with some big high stone walls either side, and you'd think it would be hellish in this gigantic 5.5 metre long people carrier, but do you know what? It's not too bad to squeeze down small roads. That's partly because it's so slab-sided, nothing protrudes. It's partly because the visibility is excellent and I've got a million cameras, but it also has a really tight turning circle. I think this thing turns tighter than my Polestar, which is a metre shorter. And it's a good thing it's so nimble and agile because, according to Lee, this is a city car. Yeah. No, all of their other models are EV range extenders capable of over 1,000 miles without stopping. This, according to Lee, this is just your little grocery getter, your school run mobile with a mere 300 to 400 mile range. I think my biggest letdown with this car is that they didn't make the decision to pair this incredibly aerodynamic design with lightness and modest power in order to create something capable of hyper efficiency, massive range. That would have been seriously exciting if they could have shaved some of that weight down, reduced the rolling resistance perhaps, and again, just giving it adequate power instead of excessive horsepower, and produced a giant 7-seater that could have done 5 miles to the kilowatt hour instead of 4. That would be truly revolutionary. That would be a road-going version of Mercedes EQXX concept that we looked at a couple of years ago. Having said that, I am just so delighted to see this kind of outside-the-box design language with a great emphasis on aerodynamic efficiency. I'm just so happy to see new electric cars that don't look like old ICE cars, because it's time we were a little bit more imaginative. Don't adjust your screens. We've not driven all the way down to Saint-Tropez. We are still in England. Rubbish country. Right, what do we learn? What do we think? Well, I think it's a really likable, interesting van. There's not many interesting vans. It's massive and bonkers, but it's got a certain charm to it, and it's a fantastic piece of design. As for what we've learned, what this car has taught us that we'd like to see on future cars, well, there's a few things. Next generation battery thermal management systems allowing for amazingly quick charging. Yes, please. Super crisp, super responsive touchscreens that actually move when you touch them. Yes, please. Voice command that actually works if you speak Chinese. Yes, please. And I really like the simplicity of the driver interface. No big screen, or at least no big screen that you need to pay attention to. Just a little one on the steering wheel and a little heads-up display. I like that. Less distractions. But the big one for me is this emphasis on aerodynamic efficiency. It's time to throw away the cookie cutters of yesteryear and just start making new cars from different shapes. And this is proof that you can have something that's slippery and aerodynamic and interesting to look at. That's the big takeaway from this thing for me. My ears are cold. I'm going inside now. Hope you enjoyed this. I very much did. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have been, thanks for watching.